Thank you for auditing Professor Skye's Record Review, the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who's done about 10 videos now, covering the work of Patricia Taxxon, going back a couple years. Now the thing is, Patricia Taxxon releases an album about every month, so if you do the math, I've not done videos of many of her albums. This isn't because I don't like them. This is the issue. In order for me to review something, there are three criteria. One, it has to be new. All of her work is new. Two, it has to be something I like. I like all of her work. But three, I have to have something to say about it. Something that goes beyond, I like it, here's a good song, right? So that's been the issue, is that the way that she releases music, month after month, I believe in and of itself is an interesting thing, right? I believe this is the present and the future of music, where the sort of line between sort of content production and sort of a personal vlog, blog mode is going to be mixed in with the production of albums. And that's very much what we see here with her production over the last several years of a lot of work, much of it good, much of it great, all of it good, and just sort of this wave of content as a way of making music, right? So just in aggregate, I think if you're like me, you're some old dude who doesn't really understand the world or where it's going, she is a great person to study for these new modalities of production, like where the new music is going to be coming from and where it is coming from now. But that being said, I'm not gonna come on every month, say, I like this, I don't like that. But this album, I think, is getting closer. This one I'm gonna be reviewing now, called Sapphire Apartments. Well, actually, it's called Sapphire Apts. It's shortened. I don't know if that's meaningful. She doesn't do a lot of things just for no reason, so I assume that's why. Is getting closer to something that I have suspected for a long time, which is like any old guy, right? Any old guy, you see some young person doing something, and you go, that's interesting. Let me tell you how you could do it better. Because we're supposed to know things, but we don't. But I have had this idea in my head that perhaps if Patricia Taxxon made an album and did it sort of more intentionally, less in this month after month after month after month method, that she could make something of the great Taxxon album. That's sort of what I've had in my head for a couple of years, that if she sort of spared things down and really focused and really made just a singular work of a little bit more ambition, a little bit more focus and clarity, that it would be an amazing album, which would potentially even get a larger audience than she already has. Now, this whole premise is flawed, right? Because I can't have it both ways. I can't say this is how music is made and is going to be made in the future, and also, why doesn't she do it the way that the Beatles used to do it, right? Like, there has to be some kind of, you have to have one or the other. So I think this album is in many ways the closest that she will get. I mean, she might do this again, but I think this is the closest that we can get to having a mixture between those two things, because this album is a great, it's great because she's doing a lot of things with like real instruments, like acoustic instruments or actually played instruments and synthetic instruments. She's hiring a lot of, or employing a lot, I don't know if she's paying them, a lot of professional musicians and studio musicians. And when I say studio musicians, I mean musicians who own studios, okay? Not just play in them. And there appears to be something more, a little bit more ambition in this project. And that's what I have to say about it. I'm going to be looking at it, I'm going to be analyzing it, still with the experimental side, still with the slightly video game aesthetic, still with the very personal lyrics, touching on a lot of issues of sort of emotional growth and fear and hope and all that marks all of her work, but mixed in with a little bit more ambition. There's a little bit more ambition here, and I want to talk about that. It's called, so this is the thing, I believe she is the only artist I review that is not on Tidal and Spotify and all those things, right? I only know about her because my good friend Stella, who's considerably younger than me, just said, this is the great musician, you should listen. That's why I review her music, or why I found her music. And so on Bandcamp, she always has a little title underneath. And this is one of the most interesting aspects, because Bandcamp gives artists the opportunity to give their artist statement. And as an art historian and as a literary analyst, all that stuff, like the possibilities are just endless. And you can just imagine just just wanting to write paragraph after paragraph about what all these songs are about and what you're all saying. But of course, artists aren't interested in talking about their own work, usually. Usually there's a correlation between how much an artist wants to talk about their work and how good their art is. They don't usually go together. So she just put underneath this, home for disparate pop dreamers. And I think that hints at some of the aspirations of this album. She is always experimental, but she is dipping her toe into a lot more deliberately pop music without selling out. And it's making a very pleasant album with a lot of great dynamics. Her last several albums, which I've liked a fair amount, they've been sort of kind of, like in a certain mode and sticking to that mode. This has a lot more emotional dynamics, and I think it's a good idea moving away from things that are too experimental or too single-minded, right? Like moving into this pleasant mixture where this album feels like it could have been several months of albums just taking the best parts. The taxonomy, as I like to call it. Even the cover, I'll show it to you here. I did buy this on Bandcamp, by the way. If you don't buy music, that's okay. But if you're watching this because you like Patricia Taxxon's music, you should buy her album, because that's how musicians get to live and make cool albums like this. So even the cover I find very pleasant, very agreeable. This aesthetic of a town on its side and the moon that way. Sorry, that's my gigantic cursor. It's a nice cover, and it shows a good amount of it's intriguing, right? The idea of these being the apartments and that's where you live, and it's kind of a home. Like you can imagine, when I listen to this album, I imagine myself living in one of these little sideways homes, listening to this music and being a pop dreamer. I should also say at times this album feels like dream pop, the genre itself. It's slightly airy, slightly out, slightly, maybe not transcendent, it's maybe too big of a word, but it has a kind of a floating feel at times, which is quite nice, because she also likes, it seems as though she often likes to sort of like keep you in the dirt and grinding in some gears and just like totally on the ground, just but other times she has you sort of floating up in the air, and this feels a little bit more of that floating style. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through track by track. I'm going to play you much of the album. One of the things that I love about Patricia Taxxon is that she just says, you can take my music, use it however you want, just give me credit. And if music is the fight against copyright is like the great fight for artists in the 21st century. Like both like how to maintain a copyright, how to fight copyright, and she does appear to be on the front lines. She does appear to walk the walk and talk the talk when it comes to it, because I will be able to play her music for you. You will be able to listen to it, and I'm not going to have YouTube coming in here telling me that I might lose my channel. So I very much appreciate that. So I'm going to go through track by track, show you this new ambition. The first track is called Wind and Winding, or Wind and Winding. I don't know if this is an intentional joke. When I teach French, people often complain, how are we supposed to know how to pronounce that? I say, well, there's very clear rules with many exceptions. It's the joke, right? It's impossible to pronounce French. But then I give them the example of, well, why don't you tell someone that you wind your watch in the wind? And like, okay, we'll write that out. Right? So it's all spelled. So I don't know if this is a play on words there. Right off the bat, this kind of interesting mixture that I'm talking about with the sort of experimental side, the bedroom aesthetic of someone just hanging around in their house making music, before whatever, grabbing a Totinos pizza roll. I doubt she eats Totino pizza rolls. That's a horrible old person stereotype about young people. Do young people eat Totinos pizza rolls? When I was a kid, we ate something called Elio's Pizza. So we would play Mortal Kombat 2, and Elio's Pizza was this gross pizza that was served in a rectangle, and you put it in a toaster oven. It's probably not better than Totinos, but anyways. I don't have a script, by the way. This is the kind of improvising that the people like on this show. Plus, my dog, Toby, is very froggy this morning. He was barking at just a person walking by, so we'll probably get an appearance from him too. So Wind and Winding, it shows this ambition by having this nice bedroom keyboard parts going on, nice kind of arpeggiators, and then out of nowhere comes a professional violinist. According to the credits, it's Boyan Chichich. How do I pronounce this? Come on, I could do this, Skye. Okay, well, there's no accents in Bandcamp. So I'm just going to imagine it's Cheech, who is a Croatian violinist from who lives in the UK. And interestingly, this morning, I was going through my comments like I do. I read every comment. I don't comment on every comment because I guess it makes you look desperate, but I do read them all. And Bojan Cicic actually commented on a previous Patricia Taxxon video talking about being on this album. So it's very funny because I was listening to this album while the person who was playing on the album was messaging me. And so it's really nice because we have this sort of simple, I just do it all alone in my room and I'm just playing, mixed in with somebody who's put in several tens of thousands of hours into playing violin, playing over it, and it's a great mixture of organic and electronic and amateur and professional musicianship. It is really trying at something here. So let's listen to a little bit off this opening track. And this does help to set the dreamlike atmosphere that I'm talking about here. Kind of nice lilting melodies and this great interplay between these things. I have to say, my first listen was great, but the second listen was amazing. Like, I just wanted to keep listening to this album. I think this is one I'm going to return to in the future. Next track is called Dandelion. Kind of a downbeat keyboard music, sort of. It's like she does a lot with rhythms and interesting kind of like sounds of like automated rhythms that don't quite sync together and some distortion here. I'm going to play a little bit here of this track just so you get a sense of this sense I'm talking about. Still kind of in this kind of dreamy mode. But if you hear how the rhythms don't quite sync up, right? Or they do, but they're very complicated. I apologize for the lighting, by the way. The sun is my lighting rig, and so it keeps going behind these clouds. So I just keep going whoosh. Just keeps lighting up. Okay. And I really like the compression on these sounds too, and it develops quite nicely. There's an interesting thing about her music, which is if you're like me and you used to watch Netflix and you used to listen to podcasts and now all you do is watch YouTube. That's all I do, right? That's 99% of my entertainment information, everything comes from YouTube. You hear Patricia Taxxon everywhere because she doesn't copyright her music, because her music is good. So I wonder, I don't know the answer to this, I wonder if part of what she does is she knows that if she writes music like this, good instrumental music that has slightly video game aesthetic, not super heavy so that it's cheesy, interesting, engaging music that you hear and it's not just background music. Like, you know, this is not that garbage that they give out for free on YouTube, you know, like the bank of, you know, uncopyrighted music. So I wonder, you know, is this sort of part of what she's trying to do, is make music that she knows can be used? I have for a while watched a lot of these videos about breaking video game records. I don't know why. I don't know. I don't really play video games, but I love watching these videos. And like one of her songs is used by like the #1 speedrunner video channel. And it's so funny because every time I hear it, to me, it's like I'm hearing some band, you know, oh, cool. They're using the Pixies as an opening here, right? Like it's some band that I know really well and the music's being used here. So I wonder if that's part of it. And this is another thing which, as an Generation Xer, stop selling out to the man, art has to have a certain purpose, all that BS. You know, it could be an insult to say, is she making music to go along with YouTube, you know, as a sound bed for YouTubers talking about, I don't know, the Marxist underpinnings of Happy Feet, right? I can't, the Xer in me wants to say that that's not as good as what music is supposed to be. But I think I'm wrong, right? Like, I think that Xer in me is wrong and outdated. I think it is important that YouTube has a good soundtrack, and Patricia Taxxon is really helping on that. Next is called The Horse, kind of an upbeat house track. She's been doing a little bit more stuff with house, playing around a lot of rhythmic bizarreness, a very, like she uses a particular tone, which is almost like her tone, and that comes in here. They actually go full video game noise about halfway through, which is nice though, because at the very end they bring back that video game noise and let it be on its own, and it's nice. There's even kind of a weird sort of New Jack breakdown, like New Jack rhythms, like the 90s R&B thing. Pretty nice there. Next track, Vinos, is a fairly straightforward, like, no, there's not, why did I put that in my notes? Okay, just look at how stupid my notes are. A fairly straightforward, slightly dance hall industrial beat. How can something be straightforward while also being slightly dance hall industrial beat? I'm going to play this for you just so you know I'm not crazy, because I can, because I don't have to worry about the copyright goblins. So here's what I'm referring to as a slightly straightforward dance hall beat. I mean, that's not really that straightforward, especially the way the drums sound, and mixed in with that opening, that nice kind of gentle, dreaming opening. And then what's interesting here is we have our first appearance of vocals on the album, which I will skip ahead to. Now, I mean, this rhythm even sounds a little bit sort of, South American, right? And it's sung in Portuguese. So I don't know if it's supposed to be Portuguese from Portugal or Portuguese from Brazil, but it's sung in Portuguese, which is nice. I very much appreciate as a language teacher that she's working in other languages now. And it's a very nice professional singer singing in Portuguese. I looked her up online, and she's a music teacher, someone who's trying to make their way through life, someone who's trying to be a musician and an artist while teaching others. And it's really nice that Patricia Taxxon is finding a way to highlight these professional musicians who can do what she can't, right? I mean, she could do a lot of things, but she can't sing this well, right? I mean, very few people on earth can sing this well, and she's a professional singer. And it is very much this sort of dream pop mode of a just nice, ethereal sound, dream pop entry for pop dreamers. But I was supposed to say that and then play it, and then you were supposed to hear it and go, oh, Skye, what an amazing, illuminating point. But then I hit play, it didn't work. There we go, okay. See, there's Toby. I told you Toby was coming back. This is a goofy video. The next track is called Kanban, which I think is the central point of the album. I don't know. They ask you whenever you buy stuff on Bandcamp to give your favorite track. I usually don't do that. I don't know. I guess I should, because it helps the artist, but I have a hard time choosing. I think this is the highlight of the album, and it's sort of the central point, and I think it shows this move towards a little bit more refinement that is displayed by this album. Now, I say that fully expecting that the album next month will just be all, like some aggressive mixture of, like, I don't know, garbage disposals and bagpipes, right? I mean, I don't think that she is going in one direction and this is the direction that she's going forever, which is part of what makes her such an interesting artist, is you don't know where she's going to go. But I would say that this song, Kanban, sort of is the most Taxxon-y, is the most developed, the best mixture of these two different modes of this sort of experimental, high amount of content production mixed with a more refined artistry. And it goes the most places. And she's singing. And what's nice is I have a very sort of, not love-hate, but love-aggravated relationship with her voice. Sometimes I love it, sometimes I find it aggravating. But when it's used sparingly, here, it's very welcome. It's great. As a matter of fact, the album would be much, much worse if it contained none of her voice, right? So it starts off these kind of tinkling, automated rhythmic sounds. Her voice is used sparingly, very touching lyrics. These lyrics appear to be about, just the term that's repeated over and over again is, but we are just little kids. And, part of what makes this channel interesting has always been that I am an old man who's trying to understand youth culture a lot of times, right? Sometimes I review The Who or Paul McCartney or people who are way older than me, but a lot of it is just trying to have an open mind. And this feeling, I remember having this feeling when I was in my 20s, my early 20s, like I'm just a kid, like what the hell do I know? Like I keep acting like I'm an adult, but I'm just a kid. Thought it would last forever, but we're just little kids. This kind of insecurity is meaningful, is well expressed, and this energy, the energy of insecurity, is an underrated source of power, and she uses that energy quite well. And then sort of out of nowhere comes this really intense rhythmic choice. I'm going to play it for you, but then so she sings this way and it's kind of dreamy and it's very aggressive. Rhythms come in and then she starts singing along with those rhythms. It's really quite beautiful, and it shows this ambition that she's having to create this new kind of art and this great mixture of the quickly produced and the more refined. Okay, I have to stop saying the same thing over and over again in different ways. Okay, so here's the point where this rhythmic stuff comes in.
We saw so much together, thought I could handle this, thought it would last forever.
Get ready for the crazy part.
Just little kids.
I can't get it right. I'm trying to look at it right at the same time. Yeah. So, that's interesting as a diversion, right? But what she's going to do is she's going to come back and manage to find a way to sing the same basic melody over this really energetic, upbeat part. This is deceptively complicated and I think quite interesting. Very nicely textured with a little bit of added keyboards on there as well. This might be the best Taxxon song ever made. It might be. It might be. It's just because it does so much of what she does well all in one song. But that's just my opinion, obviously. There's no official ruling board on taxonomy. The next track is called You're Welcome, and this appears to be this really strong attempt at writing pop music. Very simple chords this time, played fairly straightforward. A very talented female vocalist comes in and sings it. What I like is that it's very clearly a Taxxon melody. She has a way of writing melody and using melody very similar to that, kind of extended melodies that go certain places, but it's sung by a professional musician. And then, Bojan Cicic, the way Serbo-Croatian is written is they have like different accents. So if I don't see the accents on the name, I don't know how to pronounce it. So I'm just going to guess it's Cicic. Comes back in and does like a whole quartet. And so much like the beginning, we had this wonderful mixture of an amateur musician and a professional musician and electronic pop sounds and actual chamber music being played. It all kind of goes down together in the middle of this very ambitious, very interesting song that is also a very good pop song that does a lot of things that pop songs do well. So again, I'll play you this kind of breakdown part. I love being able to play so much of the music. Oh, never change on the copyright stuff. Phew. This song is fairly epic, I would say. So here's this part playing here, and then the rest is going to come back in eventually. Right? This is all the same song, and it goes really well together, and the singing's catchy, and the singing's nice. Very catchy, very nice use of the drum beat. At the end it says, "I'll let you go, you're welcome." It reminds me lyrically and even melodically of Ariana Grande. I don't mean that as an insult. I like Ariana Grande. I sort of have this fantasy world where Patricia Taxxon like write songs for much bigger pop artists, and I think she should submit this to Ariana Grande and say, okay, all the hyper pop stuff is good, but like there's other interesting takes on pop music. Have a listen to this. What's amazing here is at the end, then there's a bass solo, a very unexpected bass solo. And one thing that I like to talk about a lot, and this is someone who is a father of two and a teacher of hundreds, that young people are always going to be smarter than old people. That is just always going to happen. And part of what makes this bass solo interesting is that it's evidence of why young people are always going to be smarter than old people. The bass solo is made by someone named Adam Neely. And if you don't subscribe to Adam Neely, you really should. He has a YouTube channel where he talks about music theory and about music at the goddamn highest level you can get. Okay, maybe you could go higher. But he does a job of making music theory palatable that is virtually impossible. God damn it, is it difficult to get people to care about tonalities and microtonalities and rhythmic and polyrhythms and scales and intervals and all these things. But Adam Neely manages to do it. And when I say that young people are going to be smarter than old people, Adam Neely is one of my first reasons why. Take as an example, he has a video about polyrhythms in 7/11 time signature, okay? This guy has 1 million views on that. 1 million views. 1 million people care enough to hear about polyrhythms in 7/11. That I get it, okay? Logan Paul and Jake Paul are talking about making stacks in their Totinos Fortnite playroom or whatever it is. I get it, okay? I get it that people are also stupid and that young people are also incredibly stupid and shallow and solipsistic and all that stuff. That's always been true. But good Lord, what does it mean that there's like some guy in his 20s, I assume, who's making videos about polyrhythms in 7/11 and he's able to make a living off of it? He has other videos on like how difficult it is to live as an artist, or the relationship between music appreciation and white supremacy. He's doing all of these things, and he's a great musician who gets to play on here. So when you hear him playing, it's not just that he's a good bass player playing on a Patricia Taxxon video. It's this little inlet into this whole world of why young people are so smart right now, why we should have hope, that the world is not just Trumpy looking backwards, it's also these people looking forwards. And I don't know, like when I was Patricia Taxxon's age, what did I have? What? The Village Voice, the Boston Phoenix, Spin Magazine, some douchey jazz fan who lived on the same floor as me as a freshman in college? Eric, with your pork pie hat? That's what I had. That was my access to these kinds of themes. Maybe if I found these magazines or these little articles, I could look into them and I could find them. Or maybe if I was lucky, the music professor at my college would be particularly forward-thinking. But this access to knowledge is really important and is really great. And it's making great artists like Patricia Taxxon. It's making great thinkers like Adam Neely, who is going to do more for music appreciation than the Berklee School of Music, eventually. Okay, maybe that's going a little bit far, but because there has to be someone. There has to be someone at the top who's giving the information in the first place. But the dispersal of information is just wonderful. That's why I'm featuring this Lego set in the background, because when I was a kid, I played with action figures, and action figures are for dummies. Look, Chewbacca shoots Greedo. Oh, Greedo ducks. Okay, and then my kids are out here and they're building these complicated spaceships. They're too old for Lego now. I buy them one set a year. But still, the fact that they did that, I think, is an indicator of just the more development and the smarter that they are. So there we go. That's a little mini essay in the middle of this video about Patricia Taxxon. But I really enjoy talking about this stuff. The next track is called The Panther, which uses sort of a church organ sound, which is very nicely. There's a very kind of aggressive saxophone that comes in here, like a saxophone solo. I don't know who's playing. I don't know if it's on the keyboard. I think it's probably a keyboard, not an actual saxophonist. But some real virtuosity here, which you don't always hear on her work, but you do hear in this song. almost like a jazz solo, but with those like slightly detuned chords underneath being played here. This seems to be an actual effort at some real jazz musicianship, which is quite nice. Next track is called Loving Was, a sort of, I think, a weaker entry in the sort of mainstream pop efforts on this album, but I still like it. It's basically a soul song, but with Taxxon keyboard sounds. The vocalist is sort of like Freddie Mercury meets Gerard Way, which I guess I should probably tell my daughter, she would like that. Another one of these singers who's a professional musician who owns a studio, I think somewhere in California. Kind of weird and poppy. I like it. I like the lyrics. And I think that if she keeps making music like this, by the end of the year, we'll have a full album of just pop music, which would be interesting. The next track is called Boom, and I was expecting lots of cool boomy sounds, and I ended up liking it more than that sounded. Fairly kind of funky, which is nice. She doesn't do a lot of funk. She does a lot of like things that you dance to, but not a lot of things that are actually funky. Almost even kind of Nine Inch Nails-ish at times. Speaking of things that plagued me in college. Let's play a little bit of just this nice beat. You know, just kind of showing that she can make something that's fairly straightforward, that's funky, that's interesting, that's engaging, maybe more soundtrack music as well. Next track is called Our Axis, another one of these kind of pop songs sung by someone who's not her. Goes very well, I think, with You're Welcome. In this case, it's sort of like a full crooner, just a complete and total crooner. This is one of the weirder songs on the album, kind of unexpectedly, because it has a very unexpectedly aggravating and bizarre chorus for the rest of the pop song, which I'll play a little bit of here. Fairly straightforward here, and then it's going to get right. This is just like a very it's kind of like turning the screw and making a fair amount of tension. It ended up being a lot more experimental than it seemed it was going to be. So I'm trying not to turn my head this way because that's when the light gets all goofy. Then the album ends with Fireflies, which is a cover of a song by Owl City. And this is a song that I vaguely remember but was a huge hit. And I realized this might be Patricia Taxxon sort of saying, hey, here's what I would like. Because the original song, which is played, not note for note, but this is not a particularly divergent cover. The original song is a quirky kid alone in their bedroom making a song that is catchy and a little bit bizarre and personal and nice and poppy and cool. So I think, you know, this one-hit wonder, basically, Owl City, this seems to be sort of like a recognition that maybe that's what Patricia Taxxon, like that's a height that she could reach, although I think she could go further than that, but maybe just sort of saying, hey, there's a kind of artistic continuity between the two. So there you go. There's my review. I am curious, you know, if you're one of the Taxxon fans who watches these videos, what did you think of it? Did you also see it as kind of a step up, a sort of a step forward in her work, or is it just that I have certain expectations that she's going to be like that because I'm just some old dude. Okay, well, until next time, I'm going to go pet Toby for not barking the entire episode, and there's the camera.